Okay, so everyone pull out your handy dandy cheat sheet here for chords. We're gonna add our 7th chord information this week. So last week we did our 4 types of triads. We're gonna fill in some of the common types of 7th chords here on this next section. There are some that I didn't include on here just because they're far less common, but if you're interested, I can email you the rest of them, or you can probably find them online pretty easily. So the first one, how you build a dominant 7th chord, this one's gonna be probably the most common one that you run into, particularly at the beginning when we're talking about, say, authentic cadences. And pretty much if you see a 7 on any sort of choral analysis, you assume it's this kind of 7th chord. So it's the most common kind. And what it is it's going to be a major triad plus, on top of that, a minor 7th. So as we go through this part at the bottom, you'll see that we have root, 3rd, 5th. We also have a 7th. There's 2 types of 7ths, right? Major 7ths, minor 7ths. So depending on what kind of 7th you put on top of that triad and what kind of triad is on the bottom, you get completely different types of 7th chords. So dominant 7th is a major triad plus a minor 7th added on top. Our major 7th is going to have a minor triad plus a major 7th on top. So the name major 7th comes from the interval, not from the triad on the bottom. Okay, so there's your major 7th. Your minor 7th will have that minor triad plus a minor 7th. Now, I don't know why, but at some point I learned this as major minor. I think it's probably more commonly referred to as minor major, but either way, it's the only one that refers to both of them at the same time with a 7th. So I think it's minor major now that I think of it, because you've got the major 7th on top. So if you want to just swap those around, minor major, because you've got for this one a minor triad plus a major 7th. Okay, then we have our half diminished 7th, half diminished, and that's going to be your diminished triad on the bottom plus a minor 7th. Okay, and then this last one might throw off your world just a little bit. It has a diminished triad and a diminished 7th. Okay, so this is an interval that we didn't really discuss when we talked about intervals because we didn't need to. Now it's going to be kind of popping up. You can actually have diminished and augmented forms of other normally major and minor intervals, but it kind of depends on context. So I always found it easier to address those as they pop up when we see them in the music rather than complicate things at the very beginning. So yes, we do have a diminished 7th interval on top of a diminished triad. So those are our types of 7th chords, and we'll see what they look like. We'll build them. There are inversions as well, but this time, because there are 4 notes, you actually have 1st, 2nd, and 3rd inversion because you have 4 different ways you can write it. So before we move on though, let's make sure we've got the letter names that we need, because even when you have things like this with your diminished 7th and diminished triad, the letter names stay the same. It's the accidentals, it's the sharps and flats that you add in various places that turn it into the quality that's mentioned up here. So the letter names always have to stay the same. So we have A, C, we have E on the 5th. Okay, so A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Okay, so you've got the root, 3rd, 5th, and 7th. You can think of it as do, mi, so, ti if you wanted to. I know that the chromatic solfege would change depending on the accidentals there, but that's how far apart it is. Those are the degrees of the scale, 1st, 3rd, 5th, and 7th. Okay, then we have B, D, F, G, A, and you can keep going down the column if you want, or you can go this way. It doesn't really matter, but it does go in order. G, A, B, C, D, E, F. Okay, and one last thing, I'm going to go ahead and put it over here. I wish I had done another column over here, but it doesn't really matter at this point. You can just add it off to the side. We're going to put the symbols that you would see for those when you're identifying them. So when you have a dominant 7th, you're just going to see a little 7 up there as long as it's in root position. When you have a major 7th, you're going to see M7 with a capital M. Your minor seventh is lowercase m7. No surprises there. Your minor major seventh is actually going to have both. You're going to go minor first, then major, then 7. And then for your half diminished seventh, you're going to have the diminished sign with a slash through it and your 7. And for your diminished seventh, fully diminished seventh, you're going to have just the diminished sign with your 7. Now, there are other types of sevenths, like I mentioned. There's also augmented major and augmented, but again, those are less common, probably not something that we will run into as often as we're doing all of this, especially since we only have 6 weeks. So that is your complete chord cheat sheet. You can identify your triads based on intervals. Once you can do that, you have a triad plus a 7th interval to identify these types of 7th chords. And this is what you'll probably go back to the most as you do chord analysis.